Welcome everyone to my session today. And just to let you know, afterwards, after my talk, there will be a Q&A. So please write your questions in the session chat, and I will try to answer them afterwards. So my name is Frida Rångtell. I have a PhD in sleep and memory from Uppsala University. And today I run Slumra of Sweden. I do lectures and courses and some consulting for companies. But I'm also a mom, and just to give you a heads up, today my daughter is at home with a stuffed nose. So if you hear PJ Masks in the background, you know why. I'm going to talk about why sleep is a critical success factor for startups. And I think that everyone with a startup wants to be successful. And to be successful, you need to be creative, productive. You want to learn efficiently, because when you have a startup or starting up something new, there are many things that you need to learn. Good at handling stress and handling emotions. There will be ups and downs, and there will be times when you doubt yourself, or when you feel like you're a queen and you can do everything. And making good decisions is vital. And you want to be sustainable. If we are sustainable, we have a higher chance of succeeding. And guess what influences all of those things? Sleep, of course. That's why we're here. There is a myth, a glorifying myth, I would say, that successful people don't sleep, stay up late working instead. We can see it in movies, in TV shows, when we see politicians and so on. But after a bad night's sleep, have you ever felt like this? Or like this? Or perhaps like this? At least I have. And we should also consider that it's not always that we notice how we are affected by sleep loss. Even if you don't feel tired all the time when you haven't slept well the night before, there might still be attention lapses and other things that you don't really notice. So the question is really, can you afford to work late instead of prioritizing to go to bed? For instance, when you're meeting customers or investors. But how can you really get the snooze that you need when you're building the next big thing? That's your startup. And that's a really good question. And the thing is that sleep can't be forced. Sleep can't be bought. And good sleep just happens. The thing with sleep is that we can't really affect sleep itself. The only thing we can impact is the conditions surrounding sleep. It's like the rain. We can't change the rain, but we can bring an umbrella. And the first thing I'd say is that it's important to get to know yourself so that you can follow your inner rhythm that you have. Perhaps you're more of an evening owl or a morning lark, or as I'd prefer to say, a sunset dancer or a morning yoga person. And if you know that maybe for me, it's not good if I go up at 5 a.m. and try to do yoga. I would be devastated the whole day and not get anything done. Instead, perhaps I'm very productive in the afternoon, and that's when I should be focusing a lot. So getting to know yourself is to get to know your rhythm and to follow it, and not perhaps always listen so much to what others say. When we think about the daily rhythm and our inner circadian rhythm that we have with the day and the evening and the night, the difference, it's important to think about that we want to have a contrast. And that's easy to forget when we're working indoors all day, and then perhaps in the evening, we're spending the evening indoors as well, watching TV shows or something. And the light is key here. It's important that we get the daylight during the day. Try to go outside, and of course it's good with physical activity. Instead, in the evening, we should try to keep it dark and do things that make us calm. So the day should be light and activity, whereas in the evening, more darkness and calm things. That will help our inner rhythm to adjust to the natural cycles of light and dark. And setting healthy boundaries, when to work and when not to work. That's really important, because when you are running a business, it's so easy to just continue because it's important to you and you probably like what you're doing. But if we want to be sustainable and if we want to have a good sleep that can prepare us well for all these challenges that we will meet, then it's important to have that relaxing time in the evening. And also to take breaks during the day to recharge the brain. So in the evening, try to allow tiredness. And what do I mean by that? If we're doing things that make us alert, then we're pushing away tiredness. And tiredness helps us to go to bed and fall asleep. So to allow tiredness, we also need to look for it in some sense. So if we try to reduce strong emotions as stressors and maybe be a bit bored instead, we can feel tiredness. But if we are on social media and checking the news, we don't know what we're going to be exposed to. Perhaps there's a news article about something that really makes you upset. And that will inhibit tiredness and inhibit sleep. Instead, try to do things that make you calm and where you know that you're not risking, or at least have a high risk of seeing things that makes you upset or gives you strong emotions. And of course, what makes you calm, it differs between us, but it can be reading a calm book, listen to an audiobook, drinking something warm without caffeine, warm socks, for instance. And the worries that we have, and our email, for instance, should stay outside of the bedroom. And in the bedroom, we can have, for instance, a notebook right next to the bed. Because when we start to worry and when we start to have all those ideas that are suddenly popping up right before we want to go to bed, we can write it down and then we can leave those thoughts for tomorrow, because right then there's really nothing we can do about it. So the sleep space should be about relaxation and only used for sleep and intimacy. Not having computer in the bedroom, not eating in the bedroom, and so on. And perhaps we don't have an actual bedroom, perhaps we have a sleeping space, but try to make it as separate as possible from all the other things that you do when you're awake. So the brain learns that this is a place for relaxation, this is a place for activity. And worry. It's very easy to worry in the evening, but try to do it somewhere else. And when it comes to the actual sleep, as I mentioned, there's not much we can do to try to change the sleep stages or when we're actually falling asleep and those things. But we can try to have regular routines and regular sleep times. And that will help us to fall asleep easier the next time. So try to go to bed approximately the same time each evening and get up in the same time in the morning. And of course, just as we can have a bad day, we can all have a bad night sometimes. And that's perfectly fine, and we can recover from that. Of course, you might be a bit more tired the day after, and your attention might not be as it used to be. But it is what it is. There's not much you can do about it, except trying to change the conditions for the next night. And when you're running a startup, there will be periods of hard work, deadlines, and short sleep. But we should try to make those nights few if we want to be sustainable. And there is actually things we can prepare to prepare us for those stressful times. There are some studies showing that if you are an athlete and you extend your sleep, then you're better prepared for when you're at a meet, for instance, and competing. And the same for the military. If they bunk up on sleep before they're on a mission, they're better prepared for handling the mission and the stress. And you can do the same. If you try to have good sleep and focus on or prioritize sleep most of the nights, then you're better prepared for those nights when you can't sleep and when you have to perform the day after. So instead of bunkering up on TP, we should bunker up on snooze. And be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're feeling well, even though it might be stressful and you have a lot of things to do. And with that, I would like to say thank you. And I'm happy to answer your questions. If anyone have a question, they can write it in the session, or yes, write in the session chat, and I will answer it. So the first question is, how many hours would you recommend? And of course, that's a question I kind of always get. And the general answer to that is, if you're a grown-up, then around 7 to 9 hours of sleep. But it's, of course, much more complicated than that. Some people need a little bit less, around 6-7 hours, and some people might need a little bit more. So it's actually about getting to know yourself. And it's not only about hours, because someone sleeping, let's say 8 hours, can still wake up and feeling really bad. Perhaps they have snoring issues and so on. So it's not only about hours, it's also about the quality of the sleep and how we feel. So the next question is, how come you started with this? Sorry, 1 second. Jag kommer strax. 5 minuter. Sorry, that was my daughter. So how come you started with this? Well, I was studying biomedicine at Uppsala University, and I knew I was interested in research, and I'm very curious about things that we don't really know much about yet, and to try to be in the front line of that. And then I did a couple of projects. It was super interesting, but I didn't feel the passion. So then I was in the US doing my master's thesis, and I found this group working with sleep. And before I went to the US, I also had a lecture about sleep. I was at a lecture about sleep, and I just felt like this is it. So I did a project in the US, and then I came back and started my PhD at Uppsala, and it just felt right. Next question is, what is Slumra? Yes, that is my company, and I do lectures, courses, and many other things related to sleep. My goal is to spread knowledge about sleep to the public and increase sleep health. After having a period of working late, how long does it take to recover? That's, I would say that's very individual. And of course, it depends on what kind of work and for how long this has been going on and so on. But the thing is that after we have been up a full night, let's say, or not sleeping well for some time, when we're then actually sleeping and have the recovery sleep is actually a bit deeper. So the body is trying to compensate for this and trying to recover. And you will have a bit more of the deep sleep, because there are different sleep stages happening when we're sleeping. So, but as I said, depending on what you have been going through when you were working late, maybe it takes a couple of days or one night. It differs. If I worked on up a sleep depth, how would I pay it back to myself? Yeah, that's I would say that's quite similar to the previous question. And I mean, if you have a sleep depth for some time, you can try to restore it again with trying to stick to more regular sleep times again and finding your window of sleep, when if it's best for you to go to bed and get up in the morning, and also how many hours you need. And perhaps then you might need a few more hours in the beginning, since you have worked up this sleep depth for some time. And I think that there were some new studies coming out that when someone has been working and then they stop working when they get a little bit older, then they start to sleep a bit more. So that it seems like you have then worked up some sleep depth. Tips to overcome insomnia. Yeah, so insomnia, of course, is must be very difficult to live with, and it's problematic because then you probably worry a lot about sleep, and worrying about sleep is counterproductive because that doesn't really help us to fall asleep. And CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is usually quite effective when it comes to insomnia. So, and there's online CBT, and you can also meet with a psychologist or so. So that would be something to try. But of course, the first things to try is to try to stick to regular sleep routines and try to make sure that your bedroom is relaxing and all those things. And perhaps the most important thing is not to worry in the bedroom. And if you're lying in bed and can't really sleep, get up instead and wait a while and then go back and try again, because it's problematic if the brain starts to connect bed and to worry and anxiety instead of sleeping and relaxation. So that could be something. But I mean, insomnia can have different reasons why it's occurring. So try to talk to a psychologist maybe. I can recommend bedtime stories on podcast, helps the mind. Lars commented to that. And yeah, I mean, try to do things in the evening that kind of relaxes, makes you feel relaxed, and perhaps taking the mind off the worrying part. Any thoughts on melatonin? I mean, melatonin, it's a hormone that we have naturally in our bodies. It's released when it's dark. When we have the light, it's pushing down the production of melatonin. And when melatonin is released in the evening, because it has a daily rhythm increasing a lot in the evening, that usually makes us prepared for bed and makes us tired. So nowadays, it's quite common to use melatonin as a medication for sleep problems. I haven't read up too much about using it as a medication, unfortunately, but I know there are some indication where it seems to be working, but that is something for a doctor to talk with a doctor. In addition to sleep, make sure you get enough of recovery during the day as well. Take a walk, move away from the desk or screen, stretch, get your mind off work, exercise, but sleep is the crucial part. And I can just agree to that, because if we take time during the day to these things, we might reduce the risk of these thoughts coming up in the evening when we're about to sleep. Because if you haven't really taken time during the day for rumination or just relaxing your mind, the brain has a lot to work with. And when you shut everything down and try to sleep, maybe that's when your mind starts going and trying to process all of this. And also, of course, we know that taking breaks during the day, it will help you to focus when you get back. And physical activity is, of course, good for both our bodies and our brains. So it's all interlinked. It's not only sleep, it's of course everything that we do, our lifestyle. It's what we eat, how we're active, how we're interacting with the people around us, and sleep, of course. Yeah, and then someone commented that it's super important to be outside in the nature every day, and I can just agree to that. Being in the nature, it makes us feel very, very good. And then there's a comment about start slowing down long before going to bed. As a startup owner, you're often like a Formula One car, and you don't go full speed into the garage. Slow down on your way in. And I can absolutely agree with that as well. I mean, it's not necessarily that when you work and then suddenly you stop and you expect to be relaxed and be able to sleep. We're not machines. We're human beings. We have feelings. It takes time to relax from the stress and anxiety that you might have during the day. So at least a few hours, I would say, beforehand, you should maybe stop and do something else. And I can recommend getting a puppy, but in the short term, it ruins your sleep. Yeah, I don't have a puppy, so I cannot really comment on that, but I have 3 cats, and it's definitely very nice, especially when you're working from home. But yes, it can ruin your sleep when they come in with their paw and trying to get you up in the early morning. Do you have any other comments or questions? I think this Q&A session is soon to be done. And okay, I would like to thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed talking here at UPPSTART. And if you have any questions, just write me here in this online platform, and I will try to answer them. Otherwise, you can go to my webpage, slumra.nu, or write me at frida@slumra.nu. That's my email. Thank you very much.